It's not on, is it? Is that on?
It's on.
Okay. Good afternoon, patient ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to address the issue of success as a woman in a man's world. And I want to ask you, in the first instance, is it a battle or is it a game? Who votes for a battle? Good. Who votes for a game? Good. So let's have a look at what that game might be. Now I'm going to whiz through this in a reasonably short time because I think we're a very small audience and we can all take this on board. I've been studying men and women and how we relate, and specifically I want to look at the boardroom of corporate America. In the Fortune 500, I don't know whether you know how many female CEOs there are. Anybody want to guess? 33. So 33 out of 500 are females. And apart from Mary Barra, who's the CEO of General Motors, where there's a balanced board, 50-50, the rest, I have no idea. I suspect that the female CEO is not surrounded by all women. So it's a very, very man's world. And is it? What do we want it to be? How many of you had a difficult relationship with a man in business? Any of you? We've got a few, yes. Have you ever felt that men have taken your ideas for their own? Yeah, I've got a few nods there. Have you ever felt criticized unnecessarily by a man? If you have, I want to bring about an idea that it's actually not that is actually happening. It's the fact that we are two very different types of human beings. And if you know any difficult men, I'm going to put my first proposition to you, which is there are no difficult men. Are you okay about that? She's looking a bit curious. There are just difficult situations in which we don't understand each other. So that's my proposition, because I want to find out how we can actually work better together, because this is what not just corporate America needs, but the corporate world and the entrepreneurial world and the familial world and the intimate worlds of happiness between men and women. So one of my goals is to draw a line in the sand. I think it's time enough that we stop arguing, we stop bashing down the door of the boardroom saying, we women want to get in there. I think we can get it open in a very welcoming way. I want to reframe the merger. I think the whole idea of men and women working together is a merger. It's not a takeover, it's a merger. And we are women, one of the main parties. Now it's great to see men in the audience, so I'm not excluding you, but as it's a women's conference, is how do we understand that merger as women? And the third thing is I want to change the rules. Well, I don't want to change them recklessly, I want to change them with mutual value. Okay, so how do we do this? I'm known as the ambassador of magical conversation, so indeed this is what I need to do because it's my passion. And it's very important for me that we actually get to this situation, which is world harmony, one conversation at a time. So that's every single conversation that you have, whether you're working together, you're living together, you're playing together, whatever it is, one conversation at a time. Are you okay with that? It's a good idea. I know Kathleen will understand. So what is it all about? Very often women see that men are climbing up the ladder and leaving them behind. But I think you'll all agree in today's stats there's a tsunami of women rushing towards the top of business. In fact, in most corporate America businesses, 3/4 of the workforce are female, even though the board might be all male. So the women are here, we're women to stay, and we're women entrepreneurs in the room. So one of the things is that we want to make sure that we understand how we're going to get along. Now, Dr. Phil, who I'm sure you all know, he's an American doctor, isn't he? Dr. Phil says people do what works. So women do what works and men do what works. It's just sometimes it's not the same. So we need to find out what our difference is. And I think sometimes the world is a bit like this. What happens is the man is climbing up, he's at the top of the ladder, and he's not quite sure what the relationship with women is. I've done some research with men, asking men about men, and all of them have told me that they're confused at the moment about what women want. And these are men of all different generations, from the UK, from America, from Canada, and Australia. My proposition to you is that as women and men together, we want to get to this kind of situation where there's a mixed boardroom, a mixed team, a mixed department, whatever it is, that we actually create a circle of intention. Now, I did display this yesterday. It's about joining up the dots. So if I know what the me in me is, I can share it with every relationship. That might be me with other women, or me with men, and that might be in the boardroom, in the bedroom, in the kitchen, in the coffee shop, whatever it is. This value cycle is what I call value creation. Now, we know that sometimes women in a #MeToo era can be quite vitriolic and aggressive about how they want to get on in business, for sure. And I want us to use our energy in the right way. So what I plead to you is, as women, that we become professionally strategic, professionally savvy, and maybe a little bit sassy. And that is okay, because we want to be unique and we want to be who we are. But don't let's roll in there fighting our way in a battle. Is that okay with everybody? No battle, just a game of life. So one of my studies is that men and women have different hard drives. This is picked from external research, general research, from Mars and Venus, from many, many books written about men and women. But my own study is going to put another layer on, and I will tell you what that is in a minute. I know that men have a different hard drive to women, and, if it works, men think and talk metaphorically in boxes. So men are more unilateral, they're more one step at a time, more either or, biologically and neurologically. Now, not all men are like this, but generally. And in my research, men said to me, we're really confused. Remember the word confused, not conflicted. They were really confused about what women really wanted out of life, and certainly in business. They said, we want women not to smother us, and they want us to be seen from their point of view. I.e., they're good guys, they want to be there, they want to help women, they want to be working with women, but they don't quite understand us. And for some of us, I think that's not a surprise, because we are much more complex. So we talk in circles, we are multi-level, we go off on tangents. Very often a man is asking for a yes-no answer, and we go off on a tangent and talk about lots and lots of things, and he's going, what? So sometimes we need to remember to talk the language of the other half. Now, women generally, and this is part of general research, they say to me, come on, women say, my voice isn't heard. Men take my ideas, I'm talking about in the boardroom and team meetings, so often, and men criticize me. Now, I want to tell you about my client, Jean. Jean was a very bright woman. She was a finance officer. She was going for a position on a board, an all-male board. And I was helping coaching her to confidence to get this job. And she got the job. She got a wonderful accolade from the chairman. She got employed, went into the board. I saw her 3 months later and she was despondent. I said, what's happening? She said, oh, you know, they treat me like a second-class citizen. They expect me to make the coffee. They don't respect me. I asked her one question. Are you performing the way you did in your interview? Oh, she reflected. No, I'm not. So what happened was she was doing what sometimes even confident women do. She was being cautious. She said, well, I wanted them to get to know me. I wanted to get to know them. And we'll have to ask the men in the audience, but that's not necessarily what men would do. The chairman expected her to step into the first meeting exactly as she had been in the interview. quite a bold, very competent finance officer. And she had actually disappointed him, but she didn't know that, and he didn't know what had gone wrong. So she reflected on this, she shifted her behavior back, reported back to me that after the next meeting, she had equal standing with them and she was really comfortable. So I think what I discovered from that story and many stories is that with women, we're walking onto men's territory, not understanding it's a different landscape. Now the same would be true for a man walking onto a female territory, that the territory is different to the one. So imagine one single man getting that job as a male only on an all-female board. And he would have gone in there and felt quite nervous about being in the territory of women, yes? So we have two territories which are laid down by this hard drive. Now the hard drive for me is a bit like, the male one is a bit like a Mac, a PC, sorry, very straight line, and the other hard drive is a bit like a Mac. So you get the idea, there's two territories. Yes, it's a man's world because men have created business over several centuries, but we now have two territories and they're conjoined, they're together. And we don't need to be a man to be on a male territory, but we might need to obey the rules. A bit like obeying the rules on the roads of Nevada, where I have to drive on the incorrect side of the road because I'm British. So this is what I believe is the important part, is that we need to value the difference. Viva la difference, yes? And by understanding the differences, we will become able to work side by side with each other. There's a new language that comes into a map that I'm going to show you now. So I've been studying this for over 30 years, officially most of my life. As a tomboy young girl, I was quite left brain and much more logical than many of my sisters, and I couldn't quite work out where I sat on the map. So this has become my work, and my passion is gender dynamics. So gender dynamics is the study of different types of men and different types of women. Because let me ask you, are all men the same? Are all women the same? No, absolutely. Do women confuse men? I'm looking to you men to ask us a question. But the issue is, different types of men, different types of women. We now have that matrix because 50-50, the balance of power is going to become more balanced, more equal. Now I think we've been looking at equality in a wrong way. We need to understand difference. So I want to show you a map. So if you focus on the screen, the square one is the male territory, and it's designed to be very flat, and lines and boxes and straight lines, either or decisions. The woman's one is bubbly and soft, and I've got some demonstration models here. So this is Scrub Mummy. Have you ever seen this? So what's interesting is Scrub Mummy and Scrub Daddy. Have you ever seen these in the supermarket? It's very interesting because this has been designed so that Scrub Mummy, which is the female one, has a soft side and a hard side. And the male one is all hard. And it says on the packaging that when you put Scrub Mummy in warm water, she becomes soft. When you put her in cold water, she becomes hard. So maybe that's a good metaphor for how women are acting. So what we've got here is we've got a very wonderful sponge surface for women. We have so many ideas, so much imagination. And men are men and women are women. Now I knew I wasn't a man, so I knew that I was a female, but I had a good, strong masculine energy. So I created a map so I could decide where I was on the spectrum. And of course then I realized there were masculine males. So there were men who had a strong masculine energy. And obviously following this logic round, as I would do as a logical female, there are feminine females who are more intuitive females, and FMs who are servant leaders, are philosophers, are the Nelson Mandela of the world, okay? So if I had to give you some examples on there, I would put Nelson Mandela as FM, Mr. Trump as MM, MF would be maybe Angela Merkel, if you know the Chancellor of Germany, and EFF as Margaret Thatcher. Now you may disagree with me on these, but I can talk to you later about that. I'm going to show you an example which is much closer to home, to American home. So if you like, the idea is that we need to understand characters. Do you know this character? Yes? I hope you recognize him. There's Joey from Friends. Now Joey was very much a masculine male, wasn't he? And Monica was our lovely MF. Hope she's going to come up there. And they needed to learn to talk in boxes and circles. So there was Monica. She was our tough girl. She was the one who couldn't quite get into her feelings until she fell in love with Chandler. And she fell in love with Chandler, who, as you know, was the soft guy in the three mix. And of course there was Ross, who was in the middle, never quite sure of his masculine or his feminine side. If you remember the series, he was always bouncing around. Now he fell in love with Rachel, of course, who was over there, and she had the same challenge. She was always not sure how feminine she wanted to be or how masculine she wanted to be. And then, of course, we had Phoebe, who was the feminine female at the bottom. Now these are just illustrations. I've used this map in many, many situations with other examples. We could put Pierce Brosnan there with the MM and Tom Hanks down there as a soft guy. We have Jamie Lee Curtis up there and Meryl Streep down there. So the idea about this is that this is a map that helps us understand this new arena that we're in, where there are many, many men and women working together. Now, those of you who go on LinkedIn, do join me on LinkedIn. I've written an article which is Men Opening the Doors for Women on Boards. I'm convinced that with a map like this, we could actually open up the boardrooms, but we need to ensure that when the women walk through the door, they are sharing the same language, because otherwise it's going to be a disaster. And there is some fear and trepidation out there for men today. As I said from my research, there was a very, very constant thread of this confusion. And in fact, every single man said, I just don't know whether to open the door for a woman. Now, because some women might say, oh, thank you very much. And others might say, what do you think you're doing? I don't need that. That is all down to conversations. So my goal with understanding this matrix, this map, it helped me understand how I could identify myself. So the extra element in here, over and above biology, neurology, is physicality. Now, I discovered when I was an image consultant that all the women who stood like me, straight, with a very square, angular body, and I'm not going to go into all the details, but they were all much more masculine-minded. And the ones who stood in the middle, which I can't hardly do like this, were hourglasses. And the ones who stood here, I can't even do it because my body shape won't do it. But the very soft ones, who are more like pear-shaped, that element came through in terms of their behavior. And the same was true with men, although of course men are not hourglasses. But if you take a very shape, he will be very angular features on the face and the shoulders, a shorter body, longer legs, and the pear will have a longer body, shorter legs, and softness, as did Nelson Mandela. My theory is going to be explained in my next book, but to start with, I have my magical conversation book. So the next book will explain all of the maps, all the details, and all the physicality. But for now, I'd love you to come and buy my book. It's about the philosophy of that cycle of intention, of helping us understand each other. And I also offer you an opportunity to explore any difficult situation that you have in your life. So I'm offering you a chance to resolve that without, whoops. So I have cards and I have a folder if you come to my table. But the lovely thing about this, and this is a great advantage, if you have a problem situation, not a problem person, but a problem situation, and you come and have a session with me, you don't need the other person in the room. Now that's quite an interesting thing to think about. But I have had wonderful success. I had a gentleman who came, he wasn't sure about his relationship with his daughter, who was in her 40s, he was in his 70s. We resolved this just using the map and exploring all the ideas. he responded to me a month later how his relationship with his daughter had changed immaculately, and with his son as well, because he identified other people on the map through this process. So that's my offer to you today, especially for this conference, and to understand that you are somewhere on the map. I am the ambassador of Magical Conversations, and my goal is to help you be successful through understanding who you are and where you are on the map of life. And that when you do that, you will actually be much more in sync with yourself, with your other half, your colleagues, your family, and everybody about you will be able to see the magic that's in you. Just imagine you go into a room, you spot all the people, you identify who's MM, who's FM, blah, 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 you've got the code. When you have the conversation with all those people and you get each of them tuned in to where they're coming from, you will be the magician in the room, and they will be so grateful to you. Thank you. I'll see you at my table.